Good day, good afternoon, good night. How you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Today we are going to have a serious conversation. Well, maybe not a serious conversation, but there's going to be a serious talk happening here. Now, of course, I'm only doing the talking, but just stay tuned. Hey y'all, how you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right podcast. Now check it out. Some of you might be the first time you're listening to me today. Maybe you've been given this podcast to listen to because somebody thought it was a good idea for you for whatever reason. Just remember, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a Christian podcast, but it is a podcast by a Christian. So all of my viewpoints are going to be from that vein, if I'm definitely going to be honest with you. But I have a lot to say of myself, right? That's why I don't call it a Christian podcast. I mean, technically it is because it is by a Christian, but it's not. I'm not going to be going through the scriptures. So if a scripture comes to me at the time of when I'm speaking, then I'll speak it. And most of the time I don't have the exact space or part in the Bible where you can go and turn to it. But of course, if you're smart, you can just take a couple words that I say and find it in the Bible on Google. Easy. But the bottom line is, I just want to give a heads up, put a heads up out there. I don't know how to a word of warning from an old timer who has kids gone through the school system in Ontario, Canada, and my kids and myself, and one's still going through. So I just wanted to say some stuff about that. I just think it's important for people to listen and hopefully gain something from this. So here we go. Hopefully this helps you. Okay, so the title of this podcast is, and it may change, who can say until I'm done. But right now it's Bridging Perspectives, Education Unveiled. Now, it's deeper than that because this is more of a word to the wise for Black parents in Toronto, having kids and wanting your kids to do good in school and become something one day. Now, the what, of course, will really narrow it as to whether or not this podcast is going to be able to help you. And the reason why is because if your total aspirations for your child is athletics or being a hip hop, like a rapper or a hip hop artist, or all the things that is surrounding in that, or athletes or hip hop, dancers, then you might want to listen to some different advice. Okay. And I am saying this from a personal level of what I think. But of course, this is for entertainment purposes only, so it may not entertain you, so you may want to turn it off now. You still there? Okay. Check it out. Join me today on a journey of cultural insight and understanding as I explore the complex landscape of educational disparities among diverse communities. Well, really the Black community. Bridging Perspectives, Education Unveiled delves into thought-provoking discussion about factors influencing academic achievement, featuring conversations from myself. Gain valuable insight today in my multifaceted dimensional thought process that, I'm wondering about the shaping of our education experience as far as Black kids are concerned in this country. Or, better yet, I would say the GTA, Greater Toronto Area, for you that don't know. I really want you to listen. Hopefully this will be helpful for someone. because I realize there's many of us who have worked really, really hard in this country. Probably starting, obviously, there's Black people from way back, but I'm more looking at from, say, the 1960s on, 1970s on, because that's what I'm familiar with. This is what I'm experienced. This is what I went to school around. This is my school experience to some extent, and also being a parent of two Black kids who have gone through the system and graduated high school. Both tried the college thing and one's still trying to figure it out. And then I have one child that's still in school. Now listen, there's many things. I'm just going to go on a little rant here, then I'm going to get into the regular questions that most people have on these topics. But if you want your kid to succeed, remember, firstly, you have to be an example. You have to be putting in an effort in whatever it is you do for them to want to do something with themselves. If you're sitting home all day and your excuse is that I have 4 kids and the father's not helping, or the mother's not around, or whatever the case is, and therefore I can just only have enough time to stay home and wait for them to come from school, and therefore I can't get a job, and the story goes on and on and on and on. If you're a person who thinks that you need to be separate from your partner to get more money from the government to live that type of lifestyle, you're really going to want to listen to this, I think. Or really just think about it. Put it in the depths of your heart and really think about what you're doing with your kids and how they are or are not succeeding. Think about how you punish them. Think about how you praise them. Think about how you work with them in school, doing schoolwork and not sending them off to a sibling, after school program, a before school program, a special ed teacher, or whatever it is. Think about what you are putting in your children's education. I know a lot, and this is from me growing up and watching my friends and their parents and just the interactions in other homes. Because sometimes, I guess as a kid, you really want to know, is what your parents doing with you normal, or is this this is how I looked at it. So I used to always watch the interactions between other people and their kids. And I noticed that a lot of parents that I knew, okay, this is not all. Remember, there's nothing if I ever say anything that sounds like I'm generalizing, well, I am generalizing, but I'm even more than generalizing, or I'm being more specific than generalizing in a sense, because these are the people that I saw with my own 2 eyes. It's my 2020, okay? My listening skills, my observation skills. Okay, so just take that with a grain of rice. Not every Black family is going to be this way. And the reason why I'm stressing this point is because I hate when there's somebody who has a podcast, someone who does stand-up, someone who's a preacher, someone who's just the neighborhood loudmouth, the dude at the barbershop or the girl at the hair salon, and they have these opinions, and maybe you're in the culture or out of the culture, and you overhear these things and you start spitting them off as if they're facts. Now, saying that to say this, that most of the parents that I knew growing up of Black kids were pretty strict. When I look at the kids from those parents, and I'm funny as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of one that wasn't very strict at all. I can say honestly, the parents who were strict, the parents who had respect for their kids, and in a way, in a West Indian generally way, because it was mostly West Indians. I'm just being frank with you. It was mostly Jamaicans, Bajans, Trinidadians, a few Guyanese, not very many Guyanese, from some of the other countries. But most of the parents were very strict. And thus, the students had to work hard. Now, they might have had their ways, their cool hangout, dress good, dance good, jump high, run fast, really good at singing and artistic expressions and different things like that, and being articulate and speaking up for themselves in some way, but yet maybe outspoken, maybe a little loud. But yet most of them, when I look back on those generations, the ones that I observed, mostly the older ones than myself, they did fairly well in life. They were, even though they didn't excel maybe in the corporate world, or a lot of them didn't make a lot of big money decisions or big money deals, from what I know, they were all steady. Most of them steady. They got good jobs. They had kids, marriages and stuff, and maybe the marriages didn't work out so well from some of them. But in this, of course, I'm just giving you what I know. And this is from, maybe more specifically, this is growing up in Toronto / Scarborough / North York area for 16 years until I was in grade 10. And then I did, grade 11. And then I moved. But a lot of these kids were even in lived in housing, I guess you'd call it, Ontario housing. And a lot of them had one parent in the home. And I know that was encouraged by the government. People know why, or they're starting to know why that happened. But they worked really hard back then. But I can honestly tell you from my experience and from the experience of many people that I know, the teachers back then, mostly white, are mostly not black. I mean, they're mostly not black still. It's kind of funny, and this is from being a parent now with 3 kids who went through the system. It's still very few black teachers. There were a lot of white teachers, but now some of those jobs that were held by white teachers have now gone to a lot of South Asian teachers now. Still very few black. I think our population is somewhere around 11 to 12% in Ontario. Yeah, it could be wrong, but of course that population is now mixed in with people straight from the continent of Africa, in the different countries, mostly Nigeria, Ethiopia. But I mean, I could be wrong. I'm just spitballing here. I'm just giving you from what I think, so I could be wrong. So if you think that I'm wrong on something, well, guess what? You're probably right, and you're at the right podcast for that. But the cultures are different even from that standpoint, as I bring up the continent of Africa. And as I said, most of the kids that I grew up with were West Indian. And when I say West Indian, I mean, all the West Indian islands, the Barbados, the Jamaica, St. Kitts, the St. Vincent, St. Lucia, St. Martinique, St. Martin, just those countries. And even Guyana, that's way over in South America. But just because the cultures are somewhat similar in some ways. And that's, of course, depending on black to white. I mean, black to brown and black to white. Actually, yeah, all those countries also have black people, white people, and brown people in there. Anyhow, just a big mixture. But back then, parents were really strict. So kids had to behave themselves in most respects. And those kids, a lot of them went to college. Some went to university, very few. But even these numbers have dropped off. From my generation, for some reason, most are single parents. Most of them are, some of them are doing the occupational mother thing. Very few dads have their kids. The families that have a dad and a mom tend to be more structured, tend to be more successful, because they have, both. But the problem is with the society of them, trying to get people not to have their families together by offering mothers more money to be separate. which of course generally causes the government to have to chip in. And even if that's not always the case, it's overwhelmingly the case that if a family from any color is divided and the mother has the kids, then there's a certain amount of money per kid that they get. And I remember back in those days, I don't know how it is now, but it was almost more lucrative almost always more lucrative to have the father out of their life, especially if they weren't married, whatever it is, just so they could just gain these checks. And I know a few people, and I used to personally, in my mind, and I've, a few conversations, even as a younger person, I'd say, these are like occupational mothers. They're just getting paid to have kids and having kids to get paid. And the fathers are kicked out of the families one way or the other. Either they get themselves kicked out. And I mean, that's up to debate too. Is it that, people would say, black men are promiscuous and they just want to do this, that, and the other? Or is it also this push-pull, how to behave as a wife, how to behave as a husband thing, which could be easily cleared right up in a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church? Because there's a lot of churches that do, because of the situation and people being broken up and taking care of kids on their own, even with the little money, because it's not like they're getting rich having these kids, but just well enough where they could feed their kids in maybe not just the best part of the area, depending on how smart the person was. But they would have their relationships or whatever it is, but they would always, a lot of them would stay single and do now stay single because it is more, I hate to use the word lucrative. It's more, you prosper a little bit more. Whereas, if they really wanted to keep families back together, and this is all colors, of course, it's just, I'm looking at this part of the population. It could be better, but they've realized that for some reason, it's better to keep low income people separate, because they could have just simply offered 10% more if the man stayed in the homes. I guarantee you more families would stay together, instead of giving the woman maybe 17 to 25% more if the husband isn't in the area, in the home. Depending on if you're paying utilities, it's one less person, a little bit more money. So things are going to stretch a lot farther. Plus, one of the reasons for men in relationships in the first place is to provide. So you have intimacy, emotional support, which she can get from her friends a lot of the time, or another family member, or her kids when they get old enough. And if the financial support is coming from the government, and to be honest, in general, men like intimacy generally a lot more often and are more concentrated on it than women. So if they don't always have to have somebody demanding it from them all the time, that makes life easier. They can get it when they want it, because that's just a fact of life on this planet. Then why is a woman going to want to stay with a guy? They're fairly protected in this country. That's our culture in the country here. Women are fairly protected, not like some third world countries where just being a woman out there by yourself isn't going to be as safe. And I'm not saying it's overly safe for anyone, but how often is somebody busted into your home and many other homes that around here in Ontario? Whereas it might be in other countries where there's not as much. Maybe we'll say not third world countries, then I'll say countries that are not as heavily policed and cameraed and civilized in the forms of like lights, street lights, and just how well lit the areas are, and the way that the city planning has structured the homes in the cities. If that's an okay way, I don't know. Somebody may come for me anyways, but things are just safer here, and it's easier to do it as a female in this country in most cases. In most cases, yeah. What the heck? You know what I'm trying to say. But and that all to the side there. But it's like, if you know you can do it by yourself and you're your own boss, most people want that. I mean, most of you, if you're that of that age, and childbearing age and our child rearing age, you're probably good to make the decisions, a lot of you, on your own, if I'm speaking to the women. And of course, a lot of you like somebody making those decisions for you. But you still want to have your 2 cents. But generally, people are unruly. Generally, people want to have their own way. So they rather run their own home. Maybe a lot of women would prefer not to have to wipe off the toilet seat because somebody forgot to lift it up or put it down. I don't know, squeeze the toothpaste like a Neanderthal instead of squeezing it one little layer at a time. And I'm sure, again, there's some guys who do these things, these proper things and proper behaviors. But again, we're just generally speaking. I hope I'm allowed to do this because it sounds like it's like really off. But it's just the way I feel. Now, just getting into school. You have your son or your daughter in school. And the question is, are you helping your child with their work? Are you reading to them? Have you been reading to them? Do you talk baby talk? Do you allow them to talk baby talk? Do you give them proper pronunciations and give them new words to learn? Do you make sure they're reading, or are they just on the video games? Do they get regular exercise? Do they play sports? Do they play too much sports? Have you introduced them to another language? Have you introduced them in an instrument? Have you taken them to art class? Have you brought them to, say, something like Kumon for math? Have you given them access at home to types of technology that they will be using in a classroom now? Do you monitor how much video games they play? Do you co-parent with a husband or with a wife? Do you do everything by yourself? Do you take everything your kids say as a lie? Or do you take everything that they say to you as the truth? Do you have a clear picture of how your students learn, your child learns? Do you have a proper understanding of how your child behaves? Have you left the openings of communications for your teachers, your students, your parents, your kid's teacher to contact you without getting your back up or getting kind of angry just from them contacting you in the first place? Do you and can you help them with their homework? Do you have the time? Or are you at work all the time? Or are you out? Do you keep them during the Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday they go somewhere else, and then they come back on Sunday so that most of their spare time isn't even with you? You wonder why, and I'm talking to the women, you wonder why kids want to be with their dads. Not only because he's cool or cooler, or he can lift them up and spin them around, but a lot of fathers who are in their children's lives, they get their kids when it's fun time. Of course, I know a lot of women who overload the child full of homework and stuff when he goes to the father's house to combat that. But if he's spending all his or her free time with dad, well, it's kind of pick the kids up, take them to McDonald's, bring them home, watch a movie, chill out on Saturday, maybe play another sport on the weekend, hang out, cool out, eat cool snacks and and dinners with dad, and then they're back to your house like a soldier Sunday night, ready to go to sleep by 8:30 and wake up for 7:30 and do it all again. Do you think that helps? Many of you who have now kids who are turning into teenagers, and you're wondering why they don't want to listen as much as you thought you did. When your child gets to high school, how much are you paying attention to their schoolwork? How much are you monitoring who they're hanging out with? How much are you monitoring how long they're keeping their phones in their eyes in bed at night? How much right do you think you have to intrude on them when their behaviors at school or when their behaviors with their devices are not right? What strategies have you run into? What strategies have you used, and what problems have you dealt with your kids? Have you been able to solve them? Like, there's just so many things that I would like to talk about, but I'm not gonna be able to get. It'd be nice to, this case, it would be really nice to bounce it off someone else, this whole idea, just back and forth a little bit. But I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna answer some of that within some of what I'm gonna read here. So I did try to find scholarly type peer-reviewed articles on this topic, and I'm just going to be straight with you. Most of the stuff just seemed, Black Lives Matter, leftist, communist type of thinking in the articles, where I just want somebody who just to tell me, instead of going along with the movement, just give me your stats. And if you want to throw there, you give your conclusions, and maybe if you want to give your opinion, you can throw that in there as well. But I just wanted straight facts. I didn't want somebody saying why they think that there's a disparity in all the stuff that's happening with the black kids and graduating and going to university, because a lot aren't. I know that the culture from, as I said, the continent of Africa, they're different. A lot of those students, or at least a lot of the students that are black who are graduating and going into university, from high school to university and from university on to even their masters, a lot of them are not from the West Indian Islands. Now, some might say, well, the Bajans are. Well, apparently the Bajans, Barbados is, I guess, the highest and the most literate country in the West Indies. And I guess it's been known to be called Little England and all that jazz. Now, I know enough delinquents from that country as well, but maybe they're mixing with the rest of us. Yeah, so I just realized, and if you think about it, I mean, I said in a different podcast that I was watching and listening. It was COVID time, and there was graduations happening, and someone close to me was graduating university, and I was noticing when they were flashing the pictures and saying the names, I was realizing these were black kids graduating from university, but most of the black people that I saw graduating had distinct African names, and for lack of a better way to say it, they did not look like they were West Indian, but they were black. And I guess how somebody would know some of the different cultures in some of the brown or other cultures, you kind of know your people, is the best way I can put it. And I'm sure some people may not understand that either, but many, I'm getting not all, many people from my culture knows what I'm saying. Okay. What do you think are the most significant factors that contribute to the lower university enrollment rates among black students compared to other demographics? I would say grades. A proper way to fix this in school, as far as the grades are concerned. A a desire for Black kids to go to university. If it's not with sports, financial, a lot of Black parents do not have the funds saved away for their kids to go to university. They're hoping college, a lot of them at least. And many would like university and have gone to university. I have many family members who went to university. I wasn't one of them. But yeah. So I would say those are the main, just, I think just a vision. When I was a kid, I can honestly say when I was in the middle of high school, I was trying to figure out, I didn't see the marks coming, and I was in special ed. But when I got to university, when I got to high school, I tried my best to defy what they thought I should do. And sometimes I felt as a student and as a parent that sometimes you feel like as a Black kid, you're being streamlined and we're hoping for college for you. They see you maybe reading below grade point average, or a decent grade point average, or they see you having to go down to the not locally developed, but the general high school levels, knowing that it's not going to get you to university right off out of grade 12. I mean, many Black people, many West Indian Black people are in university or did go to university, but many of them went to college first. Now there are those, the outliers, the hard workers, the intelligent, not always intelligent, just sometimes many hard workers, and some get gifted as well, who just went straight. But I know many who did, and they think they've done it now. They've become something. They got a couple letters behind their name. A lot of them had to do the college thing first. And many of them would say, well, I didn't know how smart I was. Many will say I wasn't encouraged. Many will say that I didn't have the money and the OSAP wasn't going to work for me. But most of them are just, the grades weren't there at the end of the day, and there was no push. Many kids back in my day were also told, university is probably not going to happen, or university can happen after you do a college course. But, life happens as well. Think about how many women went to college, got pregnant, and either finished late, didn't finish, but then university was a foregone conclusion. And then at the same time, many of those women, obviously, there was guys who were trying to find money to now raise a family, with or in the house or out of the house, where they would take on some of the menial, lower level jobs that didn't really pay enough to support a family, let alone an individual living on their own and supporting a family. So it's like a vicious cycle. We can play around if we want, but we know that finances dictate outcome in the healthiness of a marriage. Most of the marriages, when there's cheating, when there's problems in a marriage, it's usually financial, and then it's generally sexual. And there's a split. And why is because there's not that sanctity of marriage in the minds of many people who are entering into that covenant. So all kinds of things go awry. Women want more money. Men want to make more money or are lazy, so they don't care if they make more money. Many are just not able to, and that they're not finding the vision. They're not finding the places to work. They don't have the ability or the skills or the knowledge or the understanding because of how high school went for them. Going to school and learning 50 to 60% of the information every year puts you back. I remember there were some kids who were pointing out the wrong stuff that teachers were putting on the blackboards, were upset if they lost more than 2% off of a test. Meanwhile, I was just happy to be over 50 and ecstatic to be over 60 on a test. that means that kid knew in every one of those areas 30% more than I did, or at least could display it on a test. But yet, when you're figuring out something or just having a conversation, a lot of the time what I found, even though I was in spec ed, is that I was just as intelligent as the kids making the higher marks. So there's something there as well. But I can honestly say there wasn't a lot of time spent with me on my schoolwork. People tried, people got frustrated, people left me to my own devices, people let me go to spec ed. And in spec ed, what did I do? Try not to get my head knocked off by hyperactive kids and do math that was even too easy for me. And because there were so many kids in the classroom, the teacher could only coach you up so far to maybe if the school goes, if you're thinking of a math unit from maybe September to November, and then from November to January with Christmas in between, a lot of the time they could coach you up to maybe November. You're still behind. And then you'd get your credit or whatever, you'd get you'd get moved on to the next grade. Anyhow, there's just so many reasons. Can you shed light on how socioeconomic inequities might impact access and quality education and consequently university attendance for Black kids? Well, yes, I said it already, like most parents didn't have it. And a lot of the time, I would say back in my days, they didn't even know if they wanted to be on the hook for OSAP to university. And most kids just figured that, they'll be able to make maybe almost as much money at a university level, college level, doing some job, which in most cases you can't. There's certain jobs that you have to have a master's. After you have the master's, they want 3 or 4 years of experience. But I can tell you, in a Black family, let's just say, you get that way. Who's stalling you out for the 3 to 4 years if you can't get a half decent job in the Black community? There's very few people who are really gonna work at it and be able to pay down that loan while working at a menial job in their field to get the experience. It's not an easy thing, but it takes some dedication, some stick-to-itiveness, and it's going to take some encouragement and some accountability from parents. And a lot of the time you're not seeing that. Why? A lot of the Black parents aren't home. A lot of the Black parents are working 2 jobs. A lot of the time it's a single parent working 2 jobs. How much do you see your kid? It's a reality. And again, the parents of the kids now who are in school, a lot of them, it was a vicious cycle. So most of the time you're talking to parents who some finished high school, some finished college, but a 2-year, sometimes a 3-year course in college, how much can that guarantee you as an average pay? I'm not talking about the people who were able to make $100,000 3 years out of high school, even though they didn't go to college. I'm not talking about those who are apt and really good at getting to that money regardless. There's some people, no matter what you've taught them or what people think they've taught them or where they think they glean things from, there are people who are always going to be overcomers, overachievers, people who are going to be outliers in every situation. So, socioeconomic, of course. If your parents are broke, chances are you're going to be broke. And even if you go to school, you're going to go to school hungry, or you're going to go to school with not as good of a computer, not as good of a lunch, not as good of a this, not as good of a that. Let's just say there's some people who will get it done. Some people will come together and get it done as parents. But in a general sense, that hasn't been the case. There's been issues with fathers not being able to come to the country. Some women, they have their husbands out not even in the country because of that same thing with making more money as a single mother, not being Canadian citizens when the child's conceived, not showing a lack of respect for the sanctity of marriage. There's a whole bunch of broken families trying to duplicate things between people rather than sharing things like a car, for instance. A lot of time you'll find everybody in one family, your broke ass family, you're broke, but everybody wants their own car. Whereas why not share? Why couldn't you take the bus 2 days out of the week, maybe drive a better car? There's been different people talking about that in other cultures, whereas some will go without. Do you need the Jordans? Do you need the new Dunks? You may not even know what I'm talking about. Do you need that chain? Do you need your hair done for $150 to $200 every 2 weeks? How about that $40 to $50 nail job? Do you need that? How many pairs of shoes do you need? There's different upkeeps in our culture that a lot of other cultures don't really have. Hair is a big thing. Flossiness, flashiness, good dressing. That's stuff that factors into the culture, which probably should be factored out at some level, but it's just a part of who we are. But is there another way to participate in that without spending all of your money or 40%, 30% of your money on it? While other cultures are living slimmer and easier and really not spending on the extras that we think are so important. Do you believe systemic challenges like inadequate school resources and funding could play a role in limiting Black students' access to higher education? To a certain extent. I know there's a lot of, if you want to talk about resources, what do you need as a resource? These days, now everything's on a computer. Does the child have an access to a computer? Could it be something that's provided? Is it something that's provided? I know that there are many students who go through testing. Not all kids. Some kids fall through the cracks and don't get a computer, and they don't have a good one at home. That could be a resource. But for the most part, education is free as long as the kid has a place to sleep, eat, good meal, and a safe place to sleep, and proper, warm clothes, appropriate clothes to be put on. They can play a role, but I think it's a cultural mindset. Honestly, it's not just access of this and access to that. You got places like Salvation Army. You got food banks. You got baby bonus. It's called something else now, a universal, whatever it is. There's different monies that you can have if your money is spent right. I know that it's not easy to live on welfare, and a lot of the Black families are not on welfare, but a lot of the parents are in jobs that are paying, say, from $15 an hour up to, and this is just an average, maybe $30 an hour. And then you have the upper middle class, and as far as Black, maybe from 30 all the way up to $55 an hour if they got a pretty decent job. But funding, yeah, you can go with the funding, but I don't think not so much. It's what are the living conditions like? What is the nutrition like? What is the housing on a whole like? What is the family dynamic like? And beyond that, what is the belief system? There was one time where this country used to more lean towards Christian values, and now it doesn't, being straight up, which it kind of, there's messages being sent from home, because a lot of the families are Christian based or a type Christian background, but there's this different push that's going on. I call it tribalism. People might call it affinity groups, where there's division. And some of the ways that things are being leaned these days are leaning towards students having self-determination and taking some of the control out of the parents' hands. And to be frank with you, what kind of decisions are you making for yourself at that age? And how strict are you with your parents? Are your parents kicking you out if you don't get pullback in no less than a B minus? Is there consequences for getting less than a B minus or getting a B minus? Like, there's just total different consequences. You are looked on differently in many cultures if your marks are garbage. Garbage. And of course, there's more. But that's all I'm touching. I'm just kind of blowing through this a little bit here. Okay, in my opinion, how does representation in academic environments influence the choices and aspirations of Black kids when it comes to pursuing university education? Well, as I said before, there's not very many role models in the schools as far as Black staff are. And if there are Black staff in a high school, high school, well, both ways. I guess you could look at both, but generally the Black staff are support staff. That means caretakers, EAs, CYWs, office staff, tradespeople, but there's very few teachers. Now, of course, your child may go to a school with actually 5 Black teachers. Whoopity-doo. But in most cases, there's 1 or 2 in a school. Maybe 3. It depends. It depends on how big the school is. And I would say in most cases, most other cultures, except for, of course, First Nation, are represented even more. A lot more. Now, of course, everything's a trickle-down effect, but you could say from generation to generation, but I can honestly tell you a lot of people who are teaching our kids in schools are either first or second generation from other cultures, and some Black families have been here for 3 and 4 generations and still can't make any headway in a general sense. Cultural factors such as different educational priorities or historical inexperiences influence the decision-making process for Black families regarding university attendance? No, because I would honestly say that as far as attendance is concerned, if a kid's going to university, chances are they're fighting through and there's something that happened good in that home. Of course, not always. Some had to fight through everything to go from high school to university straight. But sometimes I would say cultural factors. I mean, most of the guys that I knew as growing up, if you're going to high school, if you're going to university, it was, in most cases, you're getting some kind of a either not really a scholarship, but you're getting some type of a way in because of athletics or music or something like that. Although they don't really give athletic scholarships so much in Canada. Now they're giving part stuff and a little bit here, a little bit there. But yeah, this is again from my experience. Are there examples of successful community-based initiatives that aim to bridge the gap in university enrollment among Black students? I wouldn't say. I mean, I know there's certain bursaries and certain scholarships that you can earn, but I mean, how many kids are getting those? How many kids even know how to apply for those? And how many actually even qualify for those? I would say not very many. So community-based, the communities are divided. So, I mean, if they have something for Jamaican kids, it might be just for Jamaican kids. Sometimes it'll be West Indians. Sometimes there'll be little loopholes and people who aren't even fully that way take advantage of things sometimes that the regular Black kids, the greater population, I guess is the best way to say it, don't get to or reach out and have or get access to or even know about. How might the perception of financial barriers, including student loan debt, impact Black kids' decision to attending university? Well, sometimes you'll have those who will think they're being prudent by going for the $8,000 education rather than the $40,000, $50,000 education. Might play a small role, but in most cases, if you can get to university, you can look at that OSAP later. You're going to university in most cases. So it's not only the financial, but I mean, the financials do play a factor. Sometimes there's people who don't qualify for that much, but parents are separated. little loopholes, people who do fall through the cracks when it comes to even OSAP. Can you discuss any potential discrepancies in guidance and mentorship for Black students within which might influence their readiness and confidence to pursue higher education? Of course. Well, you hit it right there on the head right there when you say influence. Is there an influence? I remember back in my days, we were all kind of being skirted to college. We were, if you take general, you can still go to college and then you can go to university later. That's what it was. It was always, you're not doing so well. Why don't you back off, take the easier course, go to college for 2 years. Anything can happen in the 2 years while you're at college. You could get pregnant. You could get somebody pregnant. You could have all kinds of problems where life changes. Maybe you get married. Maybe you find a job that you think's the best job ever and you don't go to university after. You just stick with the college. There's many things. Just from the more time you take in between, the chances are less that you're going to university. And if they're encouraging Black kids instead of to pull up their socks or to find ways to help them to earn the credits that will allow them to go to university, most of the time students were and still are being told to back off and take the easier courses. Give up on math. Give up on English. What role do you think media and pop culture play in shaping aspirations for Black kids? And could these factors contribute to university enrollment? Well, I mean, from a sports standpoint, a lot of kids feel that, if they've been playing sports a lot, that they might have a shot, and they bank everything on athletics. I knew one kid who would barely even do his math because he said, forget it anyway. I'm going to go to a rep league and maybe a almost professional league soccer. So therefore I don't really need to do my work as much or as hard as you think I do. Or I've seen the ones where it was the same situation, but they thought they could handle the high level math when they really just needed some help, but they were trying to soldier it on their own. Like I've seen the many different scenarios. But pop culture for sure. They, sometimes in high school, it's like you're bugging your parents for the new pair of whatever, rather than begging your parents to spend that same $200 to $400 on the shoes in a class to help you upgrade your math. From a standpoint, parents want to make you happy. Maybe parents want to give you stuff that they didn't even have or couldn't afford, but they're not spending it in the right way on you. That happens as well. Maybe teaching kids and telling them to get a job early so they can take some responsibility for their upkeep and their everything early in high school, not taking away from study time, but just enough so they're doing something once or twice a week, earning a little money, maybe even paying them at home or whatever it is, but giving them some type of work ethic and a hard work, pays off kind of attitude. Many don't do it. Many want to keep their kids close to the hip, even though they're not even watching them when they're older so much. Are there innovative approaches in education, mentorship, or community involvement that you might believe could encourage more Black kids to consider attending university? Well, number one, church. Send your kids back to church. Let them learn something on the weekend. Let them be around people who have a moral compass, away from the craziness that's out there on social media. Limit their TikTok and Instagram use. Those things, not only are they messing with young kids, but they're messing with parents, and parents know. People know how addictive those things. Those things, I took them right off of my phone. I realized how they were, and it's a waste of time. Monitoring your kids, seeing what they're doing. And then mentorship, well, yeah, as I said, there's not very many Black adults in the school, and if there are Black adults, a lot of the time they're doing the lower level jobs. And I can tell you there's a whole culture in the way that colleagues speak to support staff who are support staff. I won't even go color wise. I'll just stay in support staff, but a lot of time the color lines are kind of crossed as far as behaviors are concerned in that respect as well. But that's not our point here. And last question. It's essential to approach this topic with empathy. What empathy do you have for parents who are going through a difficult time and having their kids' trajectory aimed at university or not aimed at university? And I'll say I have a lot of empathy for people in this situation because I was in this situation. I personally, as a student, I took it on. I thought I could get there, but I found out in, I'd say, grade 10 that things were not working as planned. I did try the advanced level. That's what university level is now. I did start that right from the get-go. They told me to take college. I said, no, I'm taking like university level, advanced. And I was able to do it for a little while. I mean, the only class that I did ever fail was math, which I had to take in summer school, but that was the only class that I failed in high school. So why? Because after a while, I started dumbing down my credits. And the funny thing is, taking the grade 9 advanced and then dropping back, say after grade 9 advanced, not very well, grade 10, not very well, then sloughing off for most of my grade 11 classes into general, which would be just the college level. I found those courses, I still didn't do that well. Even though I knew a lot of the work a lot better than most of the students in there because I'd been taking advance for the last 2 years, even though I was doing horrible, but I still knew more. I still kind of brought my level down again. So it was like, you're at a 55 in advanced and now you're getting a 60 or a 55 again. Like it was just no fight, no desire to excel, but also I probably did at some level bite off more than I could chew. I mean, it seems like they're working with kids who have different delays like dyslexia or dysgraphia, or the different things that students, like the average, so-called average student, goes through. And I guess maybe in my community or in all communities, I don't know. So it seems like in my community a lot. But there's advancements that they know how to work with these kids more. But again, I'm not even so sure. It might be just the fact that they have access to computers, and now with AI, who knows? Those kids are probably even excelling more. But what are they learning with the fact that AI has now jumped on everything? I have no idea. So maybe kids who would normally get a 60 because of ChatGPT now might be able to pull a good solid 70 or above. Who knows? The jury's still kind of out with that. But anyway, I do feel it because, as I said, as a student, I didn't excel very well. My kids excelled in certain areas, but again, maybe they didn't see the example from me in what I was doing for most of their life as far as working adult. So maybe they, instead of reaching for the stars, they reach for the ceiling. You know what I mean? Who knows? But I know that it is a vicious cycle. You have to start. All this stuff has to start with people who will be becoming parents soon. Work with those who already have kids, people who are parents now or with their kids through high school. But those young adults from the ages, say 18 to 27, something has to happen where they are getting ready to have kids of their own, and there's something developing in these young people to make them succeed and to display and to show what it is to succeed to their children who they will have, so that the culture can maybe not catch up, but do better. And that's just straight, and I'm keeping it honest. Anyhow, y'all, this has been another episode of You're Probably Right. I know there's many things that you probably agree with, and many things you probably don't agree with. I'm sure some people are like, I don't agree with anything. And then there's a couple here and there that might agree with everything I said, which of course there's more to have in that conversation. But basically, I just wanted you to get those juices flowing as parents, as maybe even educators, that there is a lot that you can be doing. And another thing, a PS to all this. I heard this nonsense today from someone. They were going to be in the care of many students from different cultures. And their focus, and maybe they always tell you, what's your focus? Who do you want to work with as you're doing this occupation, blah, blah, blah. And this person was picking their culture. And they said they could do so much for it because blah 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 blah, and then they actually made a comment telling me about my culture, and I didn't agree. I let them know. I know it did get uncomfortable. I didn't rebut anything really, except for the fact of I believe in all kids, and I believe that all kids succeed, and I think that I care about all kids succeeding, no matter what color or creed they are, or race, or whatever it is, or what intersectionality they belong to. The bottom line is, students need help to succeed. They can't do it by themselves. And you as a parent, you as an educator, you as even a person in the building, if you're working in a school, or you just in the community, there are little things that we all can do to help raise these Black children to know that they can succeed, and giving them a point as to why they need to try to succeed. They don't see it now. They may be just obsessed with Travis Scott or London rap or basketball or football or roadblocks or some other computer type game. Maybe they want to be a rapper. Maybe they want to be a singer. There are ways that we all can encourage them. Maybe all you can do is make sure that when you are in public, for those of you who connect, can offer a word of encouragement, or maybe you can just lead by an example. Maybe instead of arguing with the bus driver in front of young Black kids, you respectfully decline from getting into any type of verbal altercation, because I realize a lot of the time, a lot of the cultures just don't want to deal with Black culture. It's not only because they're Black, but because there's a level of rudeness that comes from a lot of the teenagers now. And I know that many teenagers in many cultures are that way, but our culture tends to really get brazen when they get brazen and loud. It's different. There's something in our culture. There's this temperature on our chest, and we go from 0 to 100 real quick in many of us. And sad to say is this stuff happens at school. Now, if you're thinking that every teacher is going to care if your kid is rude to them every day, because I've seen it. If your kid is rude to a staff member at a school, in most cases, because these people are people too, how much are they going to invest in your child if they're rude? If they come in the class with their hat on, their hoodie on, their hair not combed, smelly, maybe being rude, maybe being loud, maybe showing up late every day. There's many people who are going to take that as disrespect. Maybe it's the language in class. Maybe it's just a perception that so many people from their different travels in society have about our culture. Or maybe they just don't like our culture. Maybe they're indifferent. They're just saying these guys are waste men, waste women, waste girls. So I don't need to help them. They're not going to do anything anyways. They're going to go work in retail. There's no basis behind what they think they're trying to accomplish. I'm not going to waste my time on someone who's not going to do anything with their life anyway. These attitudes are out there. And then there's the attitudes of the ones that do care and want to help. And there's some kids who won't even give them a chance because they are of a different culture, or of the same culture, but they'll be called Uncle Tom. There's so many different facets to this. But what I'm saying is we all can make a difference. And at very least, we can be an example. And at the other end, we can help stir focus, hold them to accountability. Don't buy them every dumb trinket that they need that's going to be the thing. They probably don't need a Mike Amari shirt that costs $500. They probably don't need the new Jordans. It's not going to give them any status. You might even get beat up for them. There's just so many things. And I know that, school boards now have the anti-black racism strategy, there's the dismantling anti-black racism strategy. Like, there's everything to combat, but how well is it being combated when you're just sending in one extra black person in a whole school or a couple whole schools, and they only have time to listen to a kid here and there, or ask them why they're not going to class, or give them a couple bus tickets here or there. The effort isn't there, and I think a lot of time people are counting on other cultures to really care about our students. But what I'm realizing is there are a lot of people who really don't care if your kid succeeds. If they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. What else is new? And I've seen it. And I'm sure many of you have seen it. You've seen it in teachers. You've seen it in neighbors. You've seen it in their peers' parents. You've seen it in their peers. Yeah, if they're black, they want you on the basketball team for them, or running track for them, or maybe volleyball. Maybe in their choir, playing an instrument, singing or something, or rapping. But if I were to ask you, if there was a chess team or the math Olympics, how many are asking and sending home to you to see if your kid wants to participate in the math Olympics? How many of you don't even know what math Olympics are? Anyhow, that's my 2 cents, my rant, my rave. I know that it might sound negative and might even sound stereotypical to many of you. And I actually kept it pretty tame, to tell you the truth. There's a lot more that I could say, but we in mixed company. No. Anyhow, I'm going to stop for now because I've gone on long. It would have been good to have this one as a roundtable kind of conversation, probably from different people from different walks of life, maybe some outside, some inside culture viewpoints. I hope, this one has just been a me kind of talking to you, and you can pass it on, or you can just keep it quiet just between me and you. If I help one person look at something a little bit different, maybe how ignorant other people look at the situation, maybe I don't look at it in a good light as far as you're concerned, and that is going to encourage you to work harder with the black kids around you and your family, your kids, or whoever. Maybe this is a bad mindset that I got from growing up here and having kids here and going to school here. And maybe there's another mindset that that you can work and it works well. Maybe you've never had this experience and all of your kids have gone to university and are doing well in their marriages and their life in general. And this information is totally useless. Well, then you know what? I'm happy for you. Congratulations. And all I would say is, whatever you're doing, instead of keeping it for you and your kids, please pass it on to ignorant fools like myself, because you know what? You're probably right. This is MCM. Take care. God bless. Hey, come check out You Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 dogs. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.